Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. Before we dive into this powerful episode, please remember to subscribe to our channels and to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes to continue hustling. This episode is sponsored by Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, the Influencer Authority Podcast Training, Mango Voice, Community Healthcare Resources, Life Chiropractic College West, TrackStat, and M-Sculpt. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 440 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I'm your producer, Luke Millette, and here's your host, James Chester.
So today we had the opportunity of interviewing Liz Anderson-Peacock. And if you want to hear about how to look at the spine and the whole body and the whole person, stay tuned. Welcome back. This is another episode of the Chiro Hustle podcast. Episode 440. It's really cool. I've asked Liz Anderson-Peacock about 3 years ago, somewhere in that time frame, to be a guest, and we finally caught up to speed together. And she's going to be my guest today on the Chiro Hustle podcast. But before we jump into her story and the segments that you guys are probably all waiting for, maybe you'll put me on 2 times speed as I say this, but I think you should listen to this too. The reason that we do what we do is we do protect freedom of speech with our show, which I think, as everybody knows, that's highly important to disseminate good quality content to people that lets people speak their mind and from their heart and real things that matter. We also protect the sacred trust. That might be a little bit lesser of an idea that you guys are familiar with. So go search for BJ Palmer Sacred Trust in your favorite search engine if you do not know what that means, but our show also protects that. We do support subluxation-based chiropractic, innate intelligence, and universal intelligence. I know there's a lot of big philosophy there, so if those are things that you might not be familiar with, once again, go do a quick search and find out what that means to you or what it means to chiropractic better. So with that being said, Liz Anderson-Peacock, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I don't let anybody get out without knowing, a little bit about chiropractic before they listen to our show. And I think we set a good foundation for that. So I was just recently out the Wave out at Life West, and I saw you speak. And I was like, if I don't go right now and make the move, I'm never going to get her on my show. So I did, and you said yes, and here we are. So I'm really excited. The first thing I always like to ask the practitioners that give us a chance to interview them is share your story. And I know you're 36 years in the making as a chiropractor. So maybe you could share your story about how you got into this beautiful profession and maybe a little bit about where you are today.
Sure. So about 41 years ago, which sounds like forever ago, I was watching a number of my friends going into different professions, and I was doing an honors Bachelor of Science at the time, so I had plenty of time to sort of observe. So I watched my friends that went into law and dentistry and medicine, and then this other weird thing called chiropractic. And I really didn't even know what chiropractic was because I just had never been exposed to it as a youngster or. Yeah. And it was interesting. It was almost like the moment I discovered about chiropractic, it was that all of a sudden I saw all these shingles out with chiropractors. And of course it was just, they were always there. They were never on my radar. So I just never even acknowledged what it was and what they did. And lo and behold, I hurt my low back. And I go see a chiropractor because that's what I understood it sort of to be. And this chiropractor, when she looked at me, she looked not just at my low back, but she looked at my whole spine. So I was a little confused in the moment on why are you looking at my whole spine? So I asked the question, and she basically said, well, the whole spine works as one unit. So one area can create a problem in another area. We just want to make sure there's nothing else percolating going on in other areas. And then when she was going through the history, because she found some problems in my upper neck, she was asking me about things like allergies and sinus issues or hay fever, headaches, cloudy brain, things like that. And it really piqued my interest because as a kid, I went through 10 years of allergy shots And I remember waking up as a little kid. I was grade 1, grade 2. I had 2 bedrooms in the summertime because I had so many seasonal allergies. And I had a glass of water beside my bed, and I had pills beside the water. And the pills were either pyrobenzamine, Dime Tap, or Allerest, because that's what was used in the 60s. And I remember thinking as a kid is if I take that water with those pills and chew those pills, then I'm going to be healthy. And because I had no symptoms. And it was, I went along with that for many, many years. So all of a sudden this chiropractor saying, what about allergies? I'm like, well, what the heck does that have to do with my low back pain? Right. And in connecting the dots, in understanding that the whole spine works and we use the spine as a conduit into changing the tone of the nervous system, thus changing that potential for health of the body and the way that the body interprets and responds to the environment. Her next question was the one that opened my brain in a whole new way and really transformed me and made me want to go into chiropractic. And what the question was, it was so simple. It was, so if you have allergies and you have this plethora of symptoms with, runny eyes, coughing, sneezing, blah, blah, ears being plugged, would you agree that if you and I are in the same room in the time of pollens, that we're both breathing in the same pollens? And of course, the answer is yes. It's not like the pollens magically just go to my nose and no one else's. And so then her next question is, well, then if you would agree that the pollens go to all of us pretty much equally, then why is it that you have a symptom and I don't have a symptom? And that was the aha question, because I actually had to say, I don't know. I've never asked that question. I've never thought of that question. Why would that be? And then she started to talk about how a nervous system can be, well, in one case, a nervous system can be fine-tuned and is able to adapt to a plethora of things in the environment, thus expressed by full health. And if various other things may happen in someone's life, and I'd had a lot of trauma as a kid, physical trauma as a kid, with falls down flights of stairs and skiing and all sorts of things, and car accidents, hitting the dashboard. And with those kinds of traumas, that can change the attunement of that nervous system and change how the body's interpreting the pollens, as this example is, in the air. And in my case, I was over responding like an invader, hyper responsive reaction to the pollens. So I had my first adjustment. And it was the bizarrest thing, because she is adjusting my low back as well, but she's also adjusting my upper neck. And my allergies improved by like 80%. And then I would say the other thing that was bizarre to me was it was like someone had taken earmuffs off my ears and I could hear more clearly. And it felt like I had this brain fog that disappeared, even though I hadn't felt like it was abnormal anyways, because that was my normal. There was such a clarity, and it was like, that's what I want to do. That's totally what I want to do. It allowed me to be my critical thinker. It allowed me to be physical with, moving around with patients and feel like I'm actually solving problems for people and getting engaged with seeing people's lives change. And that's what I want to do. And so that's sort of my entry into chiropractic story.
I think that a lot of times, I've known you for a couple years now, but I didn't even know that story. And I always like to acknowledge people that do the show with us and say, you know what, your friends, your family, your colleagues, your patients, they're all going to hear this now. And they're going to be like, wow, that's pretty cool. And I think that, when people do finally start getting chiropractic, they can't not want to support it. And that's why chiropractors say their number one marketing strategy is referrals. Because when somebody comes in like yourself, they're either going to become a chiropractor or they're going to become a lifetime patient if the chiropractor switched on, And I think that more often chiropractors are switched on humans, and they're just pouring out. They're like supporting people. They're telling people the story. They're sharing people like why they did it, why they got into the profession, and how it can help them. And as that happened, I realized that when I read your bio you sent over, one of the things that I really wanted to talk about was, taking care of kids.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I always ask people so if you do marketing, what can we tell people that can help them grow their practices? So I think you did marketing without marketing, and you got like, narrow gauge focused, and you're said, hey, we're just going to take care of a bunch of kids. If I take care of a bunch of kids, that probably will help me take care of a bunch of families, right? Am I right?
Well, it's actually kind of a weird way how I got in with kids. Was it all I was seeing all these adults, and then they would just naturally say, "Would you check my child?" And I felt somewhat deficient in my skill sets. And so I actually enrolled in the ICA diplomate program to elevate my skill sets and to elevate my level of confidence. And then when you're in the program, then you're so excited because you're learning so many things, and that is self attracts from there. And then parents were seeing such distinctive changes in the health status of their kids that, of course, then they would refer their friends in. So I've always had a referral practice. And right now I have a boutique practice. I'm in part-time practice. I pretty much only see kids, and I see a couple of referrals here and there that are adults. But most of the time, I'm just seeing kids, and I have no published website. I have no published telephone number, and they find me. And it's awesome. But that's how I built my practice as well. As we didn't have websites, we didn't have the internet when I built my practice, and yeah, it's an amazing thing to deal with children because there is so much potential that can be elicited when the foundation is an ideal foundation. And one of the challenges I would say for most parents now is there's too much noise coming at them. And sometimes I'm just saying you need to just like close some of those doors for that noise being taking up too much real estate in your brain, and tune in into what you believe is right for you with your child, and then start to go on that personal discovery. So I would say that much of my work is beyond the actual adjustment and facilitating that is finding the right questions to ask people that open up their minds very similarly to the experience that I personally had, right? And how come you have a response that's different from my response? If A is supposed to cause all of it, how can we have different responses? And so I think that that's really what's so amazing with children is that I don't treat conditions necessarily. What I'm looking at is the ideal functioning of that nervous system through the access point of the spine. And then what we're trying to do is support that by other information that is just, quality information to change the environment that the child is in.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's a really good explanation, and your story from early patient to where you are today, it links up. And I think that that's a really cool, transition of time. And you've done a really, really positive thing for your community. But you didn't get there just like because you thought it would be a good idea. You got there because you found out that chiropractic was helping people, and it was serving your community, and people's lives were changing. And when you can give functionality back to somebody's full body, through moving one bone in the top of somebody's neck, oftentimes, that's pretty amazing. It's impressive. But I guess I'm a bit more curious about you, the practitioner, because so many times we focus on, you know, the miracle stories of chiropractic, and people know those are real. But what are you doing for you? Like, how are you staying tip top? How are you taking care of your health? And how are you staying the best version of Dr. Liz Anderson-Peacock?
Well, there's a number of things that I do, and what I've done more of, and I would say the last 10 years, is increase the flexibility in my day to not overbook it. and I think that's been a really freeing thing for me, is to create space. And that space in itself is designed for me to either read or to do whatever I feel is creative in the moment. I don't feel like I'm having to push myself in that space. Beyond that, I always make time for movement. I love when I say I love working out, I love movement. I love activity. So be it walking, hiking, snowshoeing, scuba diving, swimming, doing HIIT training, whatever it might be. I'm changing everything all the time. And it's whatever feels right. And I love to do new things with that as well. So that's sort of that one piece. I try to eat as best I can, but I'm not perfect. There's certain things I really enjoy. Yet at the same time, I do make a point to do juicing and my veg, all that kind of stuff. Of course, I get adjusted. I have two different chiropractors for two different reasons. One is more of a manual adjustment, and one is more of a much more tonal technique. I use both of them for different reasons. I also have body work that I have done through a massage therapist that I really, really enjoy. Out of all of that, for me, one of the most difficult yet rewarding pieces has been to learn how to meditate and turn off my active mind and sit in the space of the heart-centeredness, in the nothingness of what all I can say is that universal intelligence, being immersed as an awareness or consciousness of the bigness of this universal consciousness, and the changes in myself and the insights and things coming to me since I've been doing that on a regular basis have been, for me, there's a lot I do for me.
Mm-hmm. So I think that there's a lot there that you shared with us, and I love the fact that you practice healthy habits, and you focus on the mind, body, spirit approach to health, and two chiropractors. I was telling you off camera, like, I think you should have two doctors in your life, one to keep you healthy and one to save you from dying. And the chiropractor can do both until you get to trauma care, and then you should have the other doctor that can save you from dying, because that's a real deal. But sounds like you have two chiropractors in your life. Maybe you can elaborate on how each one you utilize their services.
Yeah, so the one that's more physical, more mechanistic, traditional, if you will, of well, manual adjustments, put it that way. There's times I really love my manual adjustments. And then there's other times, like I practice torque release technique, but torque release technique does not mean you're always relegated to having to use a integrator as a delivery system. Sometimes I'm doing manual, sometimes, because I see kids, it's mostly sustained hold with a little impulse is what that is. But I also really enjoy a good tonal adjustment, be it through network, be it through torque release. And I feel a very different way that my body responds to that. And as I get older, it's a bit of it's a kinder adjustment in my 60s than some of the manual adjustments are. So I like them both for different reasons, and there's times that I'll do something really ridiculous and I've got like an SI issue, and it's like, you know what? That's my trauma doc. That's my trauma chiro. Is I don't want to wait 2 weeks for my torque release adjustment. I want to get that little sucker moving properly right now.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. Number one chiropractic podcast. This episode is sponsored by Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, the Influencer Authority Podcast Training, Mango Voice, Community Healthcare Resources, Life Chiropractic College West, TrackStat, and MSculpt. Let's hustle.
So it's the exact same thing I see with my patients that I talk about all the time, is that they're sort of, I don't like to put people into buckets, but there's sort of buckets that lead people to chiropractors. There's the symptom bucket that's the motivator that gets them in, which is, I would say, for many people, that's the initial starting phase, that there's a problem that they want a solution for, motivated by a change in function, often pain. Then there's a bucket that then they may say, oh, you know what? I'm seeing changes in my posture. So then it might be early detection and prevention, which is still very much a medical model, right? Because you're still waiting, you're stopping something from progressing, or you're trying to get at it before it gets really bad. And then there's the salutogenic model, which is more maximizing performance and wellness and firing on all cylinders, and really looking at idealized function. And that's where you might see that also with some of the cultural creatives. So some of the musicians, they feel like they're more creative when they're going on a regular basis. And some of the athletes, even though they might use it for a symptom and trauma, they might also use it because they elevate their performance in a whole new way, because their whole body is integrating and functioning in a new way, of firing all cylinders, is what I like, sort of the analogy I like to give. So I think that that's the same with myself, right? And like, why would I let something wait just because I'm on a schedule for 2 weeks on something over here? So it's yeah, so I've sort of tuned into what really works for me on that. I mean, I get SOT adjusted. I mean, I get different kinds. It's different experiences, and I love it. I love it. I really enjoy it.
You know, as I've been listening to you, I've come up with kind of a new phraseology, like your nervous system. If you don't use it, you lose it.
That's very true. Well, you're always pruning your nerves, right? And
Mhm.
so you're either in a growth or you're in a non-growth, right? And I don't know if it's relevant or not, but I'm going to say it is that if the universe is an expansion and we are part a subset of the universe, then we too should be in some level of expansion. Now, I'm not talking weight. I'm talking consciousness. I'm talking awareness. I'm talking the ability to connect, the ability to reflect, the ability to critically think and ponder and just bring this whole other new level of awareness. And that's sort of where I see many people going in that direction. They're falling in line with what the universal intelligence is doing with the universe. It's all in expansion. So we should be too, as a species, expanding.
Well, you also hit me earlier when you were talking about meditation. Um, I've been meditating pretty consistently for a handful of years now. What are your favorite methods to meditate? And do you consider meditation the same as visualization?
For me, I don't do visualization when I meditate because when I'm visualizing, I'm using my active brain. So for me, it's emptying my brain and getting myself, as I like to say, is in the space of feeling the nothingness around me of which I am part of. So it's sort of almost departiculating myself, dematter, removing myself in my own matter. So a lot of the training I really enjoy Joe Dispenza's work, and he can take you into that space of the nothingness really well. And he teaches you how to feel the space in front of your nose or the space that's between various parts of your body to teach you to get out of the sort of academic side, the active brain side of meditating, which means you're not meditating. The whole idea is to get that active brain offline and to become aware of nothing. So there's a few things that work for me. One, it's breath work to start off. It gets me really centered. The second thing, of course, is the environment. Although my environment, I'm far more flexible to meditate now, before it had to be like this very structured environment because I would just be distracted, which is my active mind, not being able to turn off, which now I can. And then yeah, I really go into the nothingness. So I don't see with my eyes, I see with my awareness, with my consciousness. And that visualizing initially was hard for me to drop. And it was hard for me to drop because when they would say, become aware of the space in front of your nose or become aware of the space between your eyes, I'm visualizing the space, right? I'm looking for the space. And I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get it. And then it's like, no, you feel an awareness, right? And it's a very different place to it. I will also say there's nothing wrong with visualizing either. Okay. So I don't want to minimize the impact of visualizing because I think that there is an intention that puts our attention on something that allows an outcome to occur as well. So for me, this other piece though works a little bit better. The other thing I would say is I can go into trance very easily when I'm out in nature. And that's another thing that I find, and it's the grounding piece, and it's awareness of just the space around you, where you're just really kind of focusing on the horizon, and you have sort of this peripheral open focus of awareness. And I think many people would do, if they just got back into nature and walked without headphones on and listened and just breathe or breathe with birdsong and breathe with your steps and get into a rhythm that is puts us into a very different state, and I think we have more awareness from that.
Well, I'm just going to tell you when I meditate, sometimes I get stuck and I'll have like the thing that comes up in my mind, like, oh, dude, don't forget this. like I get like this, like, you know, checklist when I'm like trying to meditate. I'm like, all right, you got 3 things to remember, guy. Don't forget these things. Make sure you don't forget these things and keep meditating. But there's 3 things you gotta like, don't forget. And like I get sometimes like that, but there's other times where I just like totally like fall asleep. And
Mm,
like I'll be so like rest and digest that my brain will just like totally like go away and I just like fall asleep and I like wake up and I'm like, wow, that was different. So I feel like it depends on like the stimulus that I'm feeling on that day. Like, do I feel like I have to like remember to like send like money to somebody or like, send this email to somebody or like make sure I book my flight for the next place? Is that like what's dominating like my headspace? Or is it just like my body's like ready to chill out and none of that stuff even matters and it just has a chance to like really relax? And
right.
I think the meditative place is different for all of us. And I think a lot of times it's what's top of mind, which allows us to find a certain frequency to like zone into. So I think it's a really interesting like topic to discuss because so many times people are like, oh, you got to sit down there in yoga pose and find your inner chakras and all these things, but really it's finding you.
Yeah. And, you said some things there I can totally relate with is sort of you get into meditation and then all of a sudden the checklist comes out. And I think when I first tried, I just got so frustrated with it because it was like I would become more creative, and all of a sudden these ideas would pop into my head, and then I would have a notebook beside where I'm meditating. And it's like I'm not meditating, and then it was a matter of okay, so if it's something that's an action that I need to do to remember to do, then I would just write it down and let it go, and then restart, and that worked really well for me. Picking the time to meditate first thing in the morning makes a big difference before any cell phone is on or any distractions start to occur because there's just too much stuff in my mind that goes on during the day with same I think for most people. And then you're absolutely right. There's times when you kind of chill out and your body's just saying, I need to go to sleep. And it's probably exhausted. But you listen to some of the greats like the Albert Einsteins that would have these naps and these 20-minute naps, and they would have a nap with a solution or a question in mind, and the solution would be there when they woke up. So I don't think that's a bad thing either. And it may have been a state that they put their brain in with pondering a solution into the field of intelligence, and then a solution with the right energy, right, or the right frequency or vibration. They relax, and then it's in the relaxed state that we become more creative, right? So I think that there's those are all things that I've certainly experienced as well. And I mean, I've learned I don't have to be sitting in like a specific lotus pose. I do sit in a chair because the tendency is if I'm laying down, I will fall asleep. So I do like to sit in a chair. It keeps me the best place where I get the best results with it for sure.
Well, I think that, the conversation has been pretty powerful today. We've had a chance to talk about, your chiropractic career, what you do to stay healthy for yourself. I really think that people are going to enjoy the conversation of how we took the deep dive on mindset and meditation and what we do it for, and I think a lot of times, you know, I just want to impress upon people that it's okay to forget a good idea. Like if you're like in state of like the meditative like state, don't have a notebook next to you. You
Right.
don't need to like constantly be an active mind. Like it's okay if some of the best ideas in the world come to you during meditation and you don't take action on them. I think that that's really like kind of like, really like it's hard for people to like believe, but the idea will come back to you when you're ready for it.
Yeah, and it's called a practice, meditative practice for a reason, and it's not about beating ourselves up like, "Oh, yesterday I had a great one, today sucked." Like, I'm gonna go beat myself up because I'm a horrible person, I couldn't meditate like yesterday. That defeats the whole purpose of it. It's about the journey. It's about the fine-tuning and creating an environment where we, um, create a habit to go into this space of nothingness, of quiet brain. And some days are easier than other days. Simple
Amen.
as that.
Amen. Well, I know we're coming up on the last couple minutes of our time together. I do want to have you share a couple more things. Hopefully you have a few more minutes, but I am curious, like, who are some of your heroes in this chiropractic world? Who helped you become the practitioner you are today? Mindset, adjusting, philosophy, things of those.
Oh my gosh, I have so many people to be thankful for. I have many colleagues that I've met through the years. My first colleague, I would say, that had the most pivotal influence on me was James Carter out of Australia. And he was a coach and he had come to Canada for a number of years. And there was many of us that trained with him. And he was all about, again, service. He was all about organizing yourself in practice, being your word, saying what you do what you say, don't cut off, don't make deals that you cannot, follow through on, integrity, and making sure that you looked at the whole spine and the whole person and not just the segmented part. So I would say Jim was, well, there's no question, Jim was pivotal to me because he led me to things like DE. He led me to the ICA. He let, inadvertently, because I'm in that vibrational field with the wonderment of chiropractic and the excitement of it. So I think that was pretty amazing. I tend to gravitate to a lot of critical thinkers. So right now I would say Travis Kirkaron is like a darling friend. I love the way that his brain works. Other people that I just love is, the people like the Deed Harrison, and on the other end you've got oh my God, I can't think of names now. Jay Holder, Donnie Epstein, all of these other types of people. Beautiful people that have passed away were certainly like Jeannie Ohm and even Larry Webster from the pediatric world, and Maxine McMullen. All three of them have passed away, and all three of them were instrumental in starting these huge programs in pediatrics. So there were so many people that I am indebted to for making me who I am, or, throwing in parts of the recipe that make up Liz in the overall scheme of things. There's a lot
Well,
of people.
well, I'll just share a little golden nugget for you. Travis Corcoran and I, before he became a chiropractor, before I became who I am working in the chiropractic world 15 years ago, we were bartending together.
No way. Well, of course, we were all just in Egypt together, a whole bunch of us, right? And that's so funny because I would say to Travis, like, something about, I said, when did you graduate? And he said, I said, oh my God, like I'm like 36 years. You're not like, anyways, it was hilarious.
I mean, could you imagine coming into a live music venue and Travis and I are running the shop? Pretty cool story. Actually,
Yeah.
I worked there with a handful of Palmer College chiropractic students, and he just happened to be one of them. But it was a really cool time in our lives together. So
Yeah.
it was cool to hear you give mention to him. I know we're a little bit over our time, but I do want to let people know where they can learn more from you if they want to connect with you, if you have any assets and any web addresses, or how is the best way for people to learn more from Liz Anderson-Peacock, and what's the best resources to reach out to you with?
Sure. So I'm in the middle of redoing a website, but it's still available. It's still online, and it's DRLIZ at, well, actually, let me just, website, drliz.ca. So drliz.ca. For the rest of the world, drliz.ca is my website. And then I'm closed on Facebook, but on Instagram, I'm under DRLIZAP for Anderson-Peacock. And that's public. Pretty much most of my stuff is private these days. It's just a preference I have.
Cool. Well, I'm thankful for you spending some time with us today. There's a handful of things that we didn't get to discuss, but I think that we definitely left the audience with a great message today. And thank you for being our guest today on Chiro Hustle Podcast, episode 440.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to close out by telling everybody, you're just one story away. Keep hustling. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.